Imagine a city where police watch a car explode but make zero arrests, all while lawmakers argue over a 30-minute curfew warning.
Yeah, it sounds completely made up.
Right, but it is not a hypothetical scenario at all. That is Chicago right now.
Exactly.
We are looking at a city completely paralyzed by its own rulebook. And today, we are taking a deep dive into the local and national sources you shared to figure out how public order and community rights ended up on this massive collision course.
And we should be really clear right out of the gate. Our mission today is not to take a side.
Right. We are strictly neutral here.
We are just reporting what is in the source material. We want to lay out the mechanics of both sides so you can see why this issue is totally gridlocked. Because this struggle, between government control and social equity, it is not just a local Chicago thing.
No, not at all. You can see the exact same friction playing out nationally.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just look at the national headlines we have in the sources right now. I can give you a quick rundown.
Yeah, go for it.
So, down in St. Louis, a massive financial backlash from wealthy donors just successfully ousted these prominent Black female leaders from local office.
Wow.
Yeah. And then you have this huge Supreme Court battle brewing over Executive Order 14,160.
That's the immigration one, right?
Right. The one attempting to deny automatic citizenship to babies born to undocumented parents. Federal judges are slapping nationwide blocks on it right now.
It's just massive tension everywhere.
And it bleeds into economics and foreign policy, too. Like, there is a 145% tariff on Chinese imports right now.
That's a huge number.
It is. It slashed container traffic at the Long Beach port by 30%. That means mass layoffs for stevedores and truck drivers. And at the exact same time, the administration is welcoming white Afrikaner refugees from South Africa.
While cutting aid to the Black majority nation itself.
Exactly. Oh, and gun violence.
Yeah.
The U.S. has already seen 107 mass shootings in 2025.
Jeez.
So now there's this huge debate over whether red flag laws are even enough to fight the military-industrial complex.
Okay, so that is a lot of heavy national news. But the underlying question is identical in every single one of those scenarios.
Yeah, how much power should the government have to maintain order? And what happens to the vulnerable communities caught in the crossfire?
Right. And when you take that massive abstract question and you drop it onto the streets of Chicago on a Saturday night, the results are literally explosive.
They really are. Which brings us to the phenomenon of teen takeovers.
So for anyone listening who maybe hasn't seen the footage or doesn't know what we mean by a teen takeover, can you break that down?
Sure. So a teen takeover happens when hundreds of teenagers organize a massive gathering really rapidly. They use apps, like Snapchat and Instagram.
It's just a quick blast to all their followers.
Exactly. And then they all descend on a specific intersection or neighborhood. They block traffic. And frequently, things escalate into severe property damage or violence.
Okay, so put yourself in the shoes of a resident in Chicago's South Side Gresham neighborhood during a recent weekend. You look out your window, and the street is just completely overrun.
Just absolute chaos.
Right. A totaled car sits in the middle of the road. It is literally on fire. People are jumping on the hood.
Yeah, I saw the video.
And then someone throws an object into the burning vehicle, and seconds later, a massive fireball erupts into the night sky.
It is terrifying. But, the most shocking part of that footage isn't the explosion.
No, it's the fact that police were standing right there on the scene, watching this car explode, and they made zero arrests.
Zero arrests. They just watched it happen. And that specific outcome has ignited this absolute firestorm within local government.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So Alderman Raymond Lopez, he represents a very vocal conservative viewpoint in the city. He is arguing that the policies supported by Mayor Brandon Johnson have basically handcuffed law enforcement.
Handcuffed them how, exactly?
Well, Lopez claims officers are explicitly unauthorized to fully engage with these crowds. Like, they cannot box in vehicles. They cannot corral the youth.
So it basically sounds like putting a referee on the field, but telling them they aren't allowed to blow the whistle.
That is a great analogy.
But I want to understand the actual mechanics here. What specifically in the police rulebook stops an officer from acting in that moment?
We have to look at the official Chicago Police Department general orders. Specifically, there are two. G030301 and G0307.
Okay, what do those do?
These documents govern pursuits, and they mandate what is called a strict balancing test.
A balancing test.
Right. Before an officer ever steps on the gas to chase a car or even breaks into a sprint on foot, they have to weigh two things: The necessity to catch the suspect has to outweigh the danger created by the chase itself.
Ah, okay, because the physical danger of a chase in a densely populated city is just immense.
Immense. Think about the physics of what they call caravanning, where multiple police cruisers tail a suspect.
Right. If you have 3 police cars chasing a stolen vehicle at 60 miles an hour down a residential street, you are turning every crosswalk, every stop sign, and every blind intersection into a potential fatal collision.
Exactly. The kinetic energy is just too high. Any mistake is deadly for innocent pedestrians, which is why the department bans these aggressive tactics.
So what are the exact rules then?
Officers absolutely cannot chase vehicles for minor traffic offenses. They cannot chase a car if the suspect is only wanted for theft.
Wait, even if the car itself is stolen?
Even if the car is stolen, they explicitly forbid ramming a vehicle. They forbid setting up roadblocks. They forbid boxing a vehicle in. The policy just heavily prioritizes human life over property crimes.
Okay, that makes sense for cars. But the restriction doesn't just stop at vehicles, right? Like, if a teenager jumps out of a stolen car and runs away on foot, the police still cannot chase them.
That is correct. The rules for foot pursuits are incredibly strict now, too. Officers are banned from initiating a foot pursuit for any offense lesser than a Class A misdemeanor.
So practically, what does that mean?
It means no chasing someone for simple trespass, no chasing someone for a curfew violation, no chasing someone for drinking on the public way.
Because again, the mechanics of a foot pursuit are dangerous. You have officers running full speed through dark alleys, their adrenaline is pumping, they might get separated from their partners.
Right. It creates a highly volatile situation where an officer might end up using deadly force over, a stolen backpack or a curfew violation. The department is just flatly stating that a curfew violation is not worth someone dying.
But the consequence of prioritizing safety over apprehension is exactly what Alderman Lopez points out. The teenagers know the rules.
Oh, they absolutely know the rules. They fully understand that police are restricted from intervening aggressively. They know officers can't trap the crowd or impound vehicles on the spot.
So critics are arguing that Chicago has inadvertently become what's the phrase in the source? A destination location for illegal gatherings?
Yeah, a destination location. Because people know they can easily get away with criminal behavior since the police are mathematically bound by that balancing test.
So when police are explicitly told they cannot chase a crowd, politicians are basically forced to find a way to make the crowd illegal in the first place.
Exactly. And that desperation is exactly what birthed this new snap curfew proposal. City officials are scrambling for new legal tools to clear the streets without relying on chases.
Okay, let's get into the snap curfew. How would it actually work?
The proposed ordinance would give Police Superintendent Larry Snelling a sweeping new power. He could declare an immediate curfew for any crowd of 20 or more people.
20 or more people. And how much notice does he have to give?
Just 30 minutes notice, and the curfew goes into effect.
Wow. And what is the penalty if you get caught out there?
It's not just a slap on the wrist. Violators face a $250 fine or mandatory community service.
So a teenager who doesn't check their phone for 30 minutes is suddenly looking at a huge fine just for standing on a sidewalk.
That's the reality of the proposal. Now, supporters of this curfew, like Alderman Brian Hopkins, they view it as a necessary evil.
Why necessary?
They argue lawmakers desperately need a mechanism to stop violence before it boils over. They point to an incident where a tourist was actually shot in Streeterville amid one of these takeovers.
So they're saying without the ability to instantly break up dangerous mobs, innocent people will continue to get hurt.
Exactly. But the anti-curfew argument is fierce. It is completely centered on civil rights. The ACLU of Illinois and academics, like University of Illinois Chicago professor David Stovall, they are pushing back incredibly hard.
What's their main argument?
Stovall basically likens this snap curfew to declaring martial law. He compares it to the 1990s anti-loitering laws.
Oh, the ones that were ruled unconstitutional.
Right, because they were hopelessly vague and essentially allowed police to arrest practically anyone on the street.
So it is a huge constitutional issue. But does a curfew even work to stop crime?
Well, that's where the data gives us this huge aha moment. Opponents cite a massive 2016 Campbell collaboration study.
What did they find?
They analyzed the effectiveness of curfews across various cities, and the study found that curfews are actually ineffective at reducing crime. In fact, juvenile crime slightly increased during curfew hours.
Wait, why would crime go up when kids are supposed to be inside? That doesn't make sense.
It comes down to resource allocation. When you enforce a curfew, you pull police officers away from investigating real violent crimes.
Oh.
Yeah, and you force them to spend hours writing $250 tickets to teenagers for loitering, so you get this massive displacement effect. Plus, packing angry, bored teenagers into confined spaces or pushing them into adjacent neighborhoods often just sparks new conflicts.
That is fascinating. And then you have to look at who's actually getting those tickets, right?
Exactly. The racial disparity is staggering. During the 2020 curfews in Chicago, statistics show that over 75% of those arrested were Black.
75%.
Yes. Despite Black residents making up less than 30% of the city's overall population.
That is a massive disparity. So civil rights advocates argue that this tool geographically excludes and demonizes Black and brown youth.
Right. They view it as a strategy that's less about public safety and more about keeping minority youth out of wealthy, tourist-heavy downtown areas.
I mean, let me push back on the basic logistics of this law for a second, because the sheer mechanics of it seem impossible.
How so?
If the superintendent declares a snap curfew with only 30 minutes notice, how is a teenager coming out of a 2-hour movie theater supposed to know they are breaking the law? They walk out the doors and they are suddenly illegal without ever knowing the law changed.
And that right there is the exact due process concern raised by the ACLU. A core tenet of constitutional law is that you have to be able to understand and predict what is illegal.
Right.
So how you follow a law if it appears and disappears instantly based on one person's declaration?
So we have a completely gridlocked debate here. Law enforcement is saying, hey, we desperately need a legal mechanism to disperse crowds because you took away our physical tactics for safety reasons.
Right.
And civil rights advocates are saying, no, this specific tool bypasses due process and disproportionately targets minorities.
Exactly. So if high-speed chases are banned for safety and snap curfews are legally unconstitutional, where do you go from there?
You have to look outside the justice system.
Yes, and that is exactly what the people actually raising teenagers in Chicago are doing right now.
What are the parents saying?
Parents and community leaders point to a radically different root cause. They say it is the complete disappearance of third spaces.
Third spaces. Think about the last time you were at a mall. Historically, the mall was the ultimate third space. It wasn't your home, it wasn't your school, it wasn't your job. It was a place for a teenager to just exist.
Exactly. But today, major shopping centers in Chicago, like Water Tower Place and Ford City Mall, they have instituted incredibly strict supervision policies.
What kind of policy?
They have essentially banned unaccompanied minors under the age of 18 from even entering the mall on weekends.
So if you are 17, you literally cannot go to the mall on a Saturday without a parent.
Right. And local parents in our sources, people like Camilla Clark, Ro Moore, and Lon Renzel Rudolph, they point to these closures as the true catalyst for the takeovers. They are arguing that youth are simply bored and completely locked out of public spaces.
Ro Moore makes a really brilliant point in the sources about the digital age, too. She notes that while the internet makes the world smaller, it also traps kids in these vicious cycles of cyberbullying and online pressure.
Yeah, that constant bombardment by social media.
Right. When you are dealing with that, having a safe physical space to escape to becomes vital for your mental health.
It really does.
So it basically sounds like the city closed the playgrounds, locked the public parks, banned teenagers from the local mall, and now everyone is shocked that the kids are playing in traffic.
That is the exact sentiment. Lon Renzel Rudolph actually mentioned that when he was growing up, he had the local YMCA. He had supervised teen nights at clubs.
And today?
Today, those places are simply gone, which leads to the holistic solutions that activists and educators are demanding.
What do those look like?
They want the city to shift away from punitive measures, stop with the fines and arrests, and start doing the hard, expensive work of proactive community investment.
I saw one major proposal involving the empty storefronts sitting vacant in downtown Chicago.
Yes, educators are demanding the city repurpose these abandoned spaces into welcoming youth centers.
Imagine taking an empty retail store and turning it into a place where teenagers can go in the evening to write poetry, or use a recording studio to make music, or even just work out in a free gym.
It would completely reimagine who the downtown area is actually built for. And we know these models work because they already exist on a smaller scale.
Like where?
Well, community leaders point to Evanston High School. They run a highly successful mentorship program where they provide actual job shadowing opportunities. Kids can learn practical trades from adults in the community.
That's awesome.
It is. And they also point to grassroots leaders like Heavy Crowns in the Inglewood neighborhood, who is actively working to provide local resources and safe havens for youth.
But the sources also make it really clear that physical spaces are only half the battle. Parents are aggressively arguing for massive improvements in mental health support.
Yes, this is a huge piece of the puzzle. Right now, a lot of school counseling is purely focused on academics.
Right, college prep, making sure you pass your math test.
Exactly. But parents want professional on-site therapists who are checking in on students' emotional well-being. They need adults helping them navigate the crushing stress of growing up in a hyper-connected, post-pandemic world.
Which brings this entire deep dive into focus. This is the ultimate root cause debate.
It really is. Critics of the city's current strategy argue that officials are relying entirely on reactive, punitive measures. They are using fines and snap curfews to punish teenagers for a systemic lack of neighborhood investment.
Because you cannot simply blockade teenagers away. You have to spend the money to create inclusive, age-friendly environments. Let's pull all these threads together. We started today by looking at intense national conflicts. We saw how executive orders, massive port tariffs, and political uprisings all reflect this brutal struggle between government order and individual rights.
And then we watched that exact same friction play out on the streets of Chicago. The debate over teen takeovers isn't just about kids acting out on a Saturday night.
No, it is a profound tug of war. You have law enforcement feeling paralyzed by pursuit policies that were designed to save lives.
Right. And on the other side, you have civil rights groups desperately warning that snap curfews violate due process and target minority youth.
And caught right in the middle of this massive legal fight are the parents, asking why the city has erased every safe space left for their children to just be teenagers.
Now, I want you to put yourself in the shoes of a parent in your own town. Why does this matter to you? Look closely at your own city tonight.
Yeah, where do teenagers actually go in your neighborhood?
Are there free, accessible, and welcoming spaces for them to gather? Or is your local mall locking them out on the weekends too? How your community chooses to answer that question today will almost certainly predict whether you face these exact same explosive tensions tomorrow.
That is such an important point. And as you think about your own community, I want to leave you with one final unaddressed question built on everything we've explored today.
Let's hear it.
We know that social media apps like Snapchat and Instagram are the main tools teenagers use to instantly organize these massive takeovers. So as these platforms become even more deeply integrated into our daily lives, will the next battleground for public safety be physical curfews on our city streets or digital curfews enforced directly on our apps?
Oh, wow. That is an incredibly complex question to consider.
It really is. Thank you for sharing your sources with us and joining us on this custom-tailored deep dive. Keep asking questions and stay curious.